You decide to run for office. Let's say President of the United States. Congratulations, you're a great patriot. 2 questions. How are you going to fund your campaign? And what is your campaign going to be about? Now, the reason why I add in cash to this, because we are no, lilies on the vine in this case. We fully understand that money is the lube that make our political system go, unfortunately, and I think to the detriment of most of the public. But nevertheless, that's true. And if you don't have cash, it doesn't matter what you want to have a campaign about, because nobody will know that you even exist. So assuming for the moment that you know how you're going to get your cash, then the second question, of course, is what is your campaign going to be about? What are you going to give from the standpoint of distinction, or making yourself distinct from everyone else on the stage in a way that the public says, yes, that's the person that I want. Now, usually, let's say for the last few political cycles, those 2 things had nothing to do with one another. But let's say not the last political cycle before last, going back for, let's say, several decades. The 2 were unrelated. Who you were going to cash yourself as didn't have anything to do with how you were going to raise your cash. And to the detriment of the public, those 2 things were unrelated, because the fact of the matter is, whatever the person said, who was funding him was going to give you context into how he was going to behave. That's not true for this election cycle. The central thesis of this election is, do you agree or disagree with Bernie Sanders? That's it. Now, Joe Biden has that position of, I don't agree with him. I'm Joe Biden. I have my own fixed quantity. Let me smell your hair. Let me smell your hair. But Sanders has the other spot occupied. So the question becomes, who's everyone else? Because the big ideological fight here is between these 2. It's a rerun of 2016. The difference being there is no inevitable candidate. So who is everyone else going to be? Now the catch becomes, if you say I agree with Sanders, then immediately you have problems from the standpoint of fundraising. Sanders has said some pretty caustic things about billionaires, about the wealthy in this particular country. And if you're going to take that tint, then they may not necessarily want to give you cash in the way they typically give Democrats cash. Enter one Elizabeth Warren. Now, Warren, for the most part, looked at this election and has accepted the answer of, yes, for political reasons, I am going to sound just like Bernie Sanders. Her problem is that if you're going to call yourself a capitalist, there's only so far you can go. And so her policies always come just shy of what Sanders is. But you also have to believe that she will follow through with those policies. And therein lies the rub. Elizabeth Warren hit her head on the rock on the Medicare for All issue. And a level of disingenuousness that I have been talking about for months was exposed to the public. Her numbers cratered after that. Now, logically speaking, she's decided to fundraise just like Sanders. And again, outside of padding her tent with the 11 million, she's decided to fundraise like Sanders, meaning on small dollar donations. She wanted to be a one-to-one with Sanders. This was one of the pathways she had to go in order to do so. The catch is, Warren at one point had said she was going to take money after the primary, but she had stopped that, saying, even after the primary, I am not going to fundraise. However, there may be, people in my campaign staff that may work with the Democratic Party to raise as much money as we possibly can, but I will stay pristine. Catch. If you fundraise that way, that works, as long as you're rising in the polls. But logically speaking, the rising in the polls is commensurate with popular support. And you would think that popular support is in some way related to the amount of money people give you, meaning if you're more popular, people will most likely give you more cash. But what happens when you become unpopular? What happens when your polling numbers drop? What also will we most likely expect? Warren is hurting for cash, and she sends out a desperate email, exposing her numbers, which are painfully low, but also begging her supporters to give her cash. She's weakening. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. We can say Soapbox After Dark. It's 5:50 in the morning. I'm wide awake. So, like most real men, I do the news. I'm putting a not at the end of that. If you can put it in parentheses, that means that the entire thing is negated. Software stuff. That said, if you guys dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. This content really is brought to you by you, since most of it is demonetized. So Elizabeth Warren, at one point, was ascendant in the polling. Now, at one point, she had tethered herself to Medicare for All. She had tethered herself to all sorts of policies, but the Medicare for All thing in particular came unraveled when she was asked the very basic question that everyone knew the answer to, that she would not answer in the affirmative. Will you raise taxes on the middle class in order to pay for Medicare for All? The answer, of course, is yes. Yes, we will raise taxes, but your expenses, especially out of pocket, your expenses go away. And the amount that's raised in tax is less than what you were paying for healthcare prior. So yes, we will raise your taxes, but your expenses overall will go down. Not to mention it's the largest pay increase in a generation since that person is no longer paying for their healthcare costs. She didn't want to say that. She put out a healthcare plan that was widely criticized, meaning from the standpoint of how she was supposedly going to pay for it, wrapping in immigration and military cuts. She voted for Trump's military budget, and now she's putting military cuts in it. On the second point, when she finally released her plan, the moment that she said she was going to fight after 3 years for Medicare for All, and that ultimately she was just with Pete's plan, hope went from people's eyes. Now, on this channel, I said for months that was going to take place. The catch here is I thought it was going to happen after the primary. I didn't think she was going to collapse on this all within the context of a month. Her polling suffered. Now, Pete Buttigieg, as he went up in the polls, she was going down in the polls in some respects, so he seemed to be eating part of her lunch on this one, and they seemed to be sucking off of the same blood vein. By the same token, a lot of her supporters would be Sanders supporters. And Sanders' rise in the polls is also coming at Warren's collapse. This is real clear politics. What I want you to see is the trend line. Look at this. Warren. And then this is her collapsing. 15%. This is real clear politics, an average. The average looks pretty much the same. This is Warren. All the way up here at one point. And then this is her collapsing. This is the average. Now you can go state by state, and she's in third and fourth. In many of the states, I think in one state, Nevada, I think she's in second. But you clearly see a trend line that's going down. And if she's fundraising her campaign in a grassroots way, then her level of support, when it was here, you can make an argument of, yes, I'm going to fundraise in this way because I'm doing great. She made 24 points, I believe it was 6 million in the last 24.6 million in third quarter. Now, this is just shy of Bernie Sanders. Sanders ends up making, I think, 25.3 million. But Warren now is, look at what she's making now. She sends this email out. This is the email she sent. In this email, we're going to do something different, something a little risky. Traditionally, campaigns wait until the mandatory FEC reporting deadlines to announce how much they've raised. But this isn't a traditional campaign. We're a grassroots team, and you should know exactly where things stand right now and exactly why it's important that you give. So this quarter, we've raised a little over $17 million. That's a good chunk behind where we were this time last quarter. The good news, we have until midnight on December 31st to get things going. Now, there are a few things I want you to notice right off the bat before I finish. 17 million is a long ways away from $24.6 million. Sanders, for example, on one day raised $1 million, over $1 million. And yes, he sends out emails asking for cash, but nothing like this. This is outright desperate. And she doesn't want a bad number. That also needs to be understood. Warren, with her polling numbers dropping, the last thing she wants is added bad news that makes it look as if her campaign is imploding on itself because it can't raise cash. $17 million is not necessarily a horrible sum. It's the difference between where she was before and where she is now that gets across the decline. My point is, this decline should be expected based on her polling numbers that have fallen. If her polling was indeed falling, meaning if public support was indeed draining away from her, you would expect a drop in her revenue. And that's what you're saying. So Elizabeth Warren needs your help. Right now, the goal is $20 million for the quarter. That's how much the campaign needs to keep our plans on track. I also want you to notice something. She raised $24.6 million in the last quarter. In this quarter, she is pleading to just hit $20 million. Meaning that's a 20% difference between where she was to where she is now. That's a campaign that's weakening. That's not a campaign that is strengthening. And whatever she raises in this particular quarter, if she doesn't hit that 20 million, even if she hits 20 million, again, that is an appreciable difference between where she was when she was ascendant to where she is now. This is 24.6 million. This is begging and pleading on bended knee to hit 20 million. It's possible this email is somewhat of a ploy, meaning they could be using politics in a sense of saying, we have more, but we're going to pretend we have less. And then on that last day when we reveal this, maybe that's possible. It's also possible that she indeed is suffering for cash. And I'm on the bandwagon if she's suffering for cash. If the polling results are real, meaning if this polling is legit, and it is indeed a downward trend that she's been suffering across the nation in regards to popular support, and that support has been going to Sanders, then you would expect her funding to also decrease. People don't like to waste money, particularly not on candidates. I'll leave it here. I'm not going to keep this long. But she is hurting for cash. She is hurting for cash. I love it. The only question, and there are only two, is it anti-Semitic for Elizabeth Warren to be in this race considering Bernie Sanders has better ideas, his policies are more liked, he's more trusted, he's considered more authentic on climate, on healthcare, on immigration. He is the preferred candidate. Is it anti-Semitic? And is it a little bit sexist that she's staying in this race when there is a superior candidate? If indeed she says she wants to, for the most part, have transformative change, then the public has made its choice on who it would prefer. Now, is it anti-Semitic for her to continue to be in this race? And the second question, when she gets out of this race, will she back Sanders? Will she endorse Sanders before the primary is over with? Will Elizabeth Warren endorse Sanders? Like, share, subscribe.